Bars is back. Sam and oh God, what's up with you? Hip Hop Uncensored is the vibe, so subscribe. Hip Hop Uncensored is the vibe, so subscribe. Oh God, driving Sam and riding passenger side, and you heard it out the mouth of the greatest rap.
Look, really ugly, to be honest with you. It makes the hip hop industry of females look like there's no other content or there's no other values that we have as a woman. You know what I mean? Right. And I actually started creating a project around that, and I would love for you guys to exclusively present it at one point. It will be launched next month along with my new album, but I won't speak much about it. I just would love for you guys to be a part of it because I'm asking all media that makes sense, that they be a part of this revelation. And but the bottom line is the diversity is missing, and not only that, but it's not just the younger generation. The women are more treacherous. The older women, they try to scratch each other eyeballs out, and then they get biased and go pick some group over on one coast, and then they pick one lady from one coast and then bring her and suffice for the whole West Coast, where there's many of us in that era. You know what I mean? That has contributed and that's over here banging out, with large catalogs such as Hello. And this is not to brag about myself. I hate that you have to talk about yourself all the time in this business. Yeah. This is what changed. They want you to always, if you don't brag or every second putting something in folks' face and convincing people, over branding, over buzzing, overdoing this stuff, it's like, other people don't feel that you are capable or important or relevant. So it's a combination of things that are going on at one time with this new thing, because it's affecting, everyone in different ways. And people are missing out on the diversity of the game of hip hop when it comes down to women. You feel me?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm gonna listen to a few of your interviews in anticipation for our interview with you. And you broke down a lot of words when talking about the music. You broke down slavery, enslaving, programming. Then you talked about the Bendava experiment with the dolls or whatever, how they made that and they played those out and children would start to emulate what they seen them do. So kind of break that down, taking us from like Queen Latifah, where she made her songs, that was kind of on the borderline, but then she made the songs about like, it's not cool to call me a bitch. Now it's wholesale cool to call women bitches. It's cool for them to bust it open, all of that. So you were there. Take us all the way back and walk us from now until then, until now. Sorry, then until now.
Well, that's a good point. I'm gonna try to keep it as minimal as possible. One, I have a project that's gonna tell every bit of the story, each component, because like I told you, I seen the whole movie right in my face, and I seen the movie before the movie was even presented. And so it's a lot of moving pieces to it. But in a nutshell, I could say it. People they got caught up, in idol worshiping and caught up in the hype, and they fell asleep to reality. And because of having fun and wanting to get high and falling into people get mad because I know people smoke weed, but I don't want no funk from y'all out there on the inboxes about no weed, okay? But I'm just saying, weed is one of the distractions that gets people tired and lazy. A lot of people, not all. Everybody can't function good, just like alcohol, affects people differently. Just like too much sex affects people differently. Too much media that is the wrong conversations and outlets and information affects people differently. And when you just only got that and that's what you're worshiping and that become your leader, that's a problem. And the problem from a scientific standpoint is definitely it's a form of programming. And it's not nobody's fault. It's not media's fault. They're doing their job. It's called media. Hello. It's called television, right? Tell your vision. It's called entertainment business. So they're doing what they do. But I put the responsibility on us as a people. We allowed ourselves to fall into it and forgot about the reality. So now we have gotten programmed, and that's a form of mental slavery, and not from the other outlets. Even if they're purposely doing it, then, and if they're unpurposely, whether purposely or not, because I'm not into the political piece of this stuff. I'm into accountability of things we can control ourselves. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because our inner soul and our spiritual being will tell us what's real and what's not. And when we get away from that, that's where the problems occur. And a lot of times we get away from it because of being over programmed and allowing ourselves to be basically brought off track of distraction. And then we fall into, it's supposed to be garbage in, garbage out, but garbage is in and it stays in when we don't have nothing else going on around us and nothing else we're interested in. And we got caught up in that. So that's where I say enslaved. Then we started enslaving one another, mistreating one another based on what we seen and what we witnessed and what we felt was valuable and what was not. And the next thing we we mentioned the Bandura doll. You cracked me up when you said that. Y'all did your homework. I a lot of people they shunned on me going to school, right? Because I stopped to go to school just in case I didn't want to do music, and just in case I wasn't with the program, and just in case I had to find some other avenues to survive. Plus, as a woman, raising children, I wanted to be an educated Black rapper woman who didn't just say she's a rapper and that's how she was successful because she was able to act ignorant and ghetto and this way and that way to survive, and that's not no real talent, or that's just not the only, that's simple. You know what I mean? So I wanted to be in the room with many people, you know what I mean, where I could have a conversation with a scholar, with any race, with anyone in any classification, and at the same time where I could still get with the hood and get in the best of them. You feel me? And show that I don't have to be that woman that's educated that's got to over act ignorant because she want to show people that just because she's educated she got to hang up, so she got to overdo that, or to be the one that's got to be super high-minded and can't really connect with others because of this so-called education. So the bottom line is, in that process of getting that, I ran across different studies. Now experience is what shared it with me from the gate, just seeing it but not understanding what it really was. You know what I mean? So in church you hear you got to renew your mind every day. My grandfather was a pastor, the great Reverend Thurman. You have to renew your mind daily. That's biblical. So I learned that principle, and that makes plenty of sense, right? But of course the other side of it, because you renew your mind daily, because you might see this stuff in your face every day, and this stuff can get you off track of reality, and then next thing you know, you can fall right in the slumps of it and lose sight of what is really important, and that's family, that's kids, that's sometimes your own space, your husband, your mama, your daddy, your granddaddy, time with them, people around you that are doing great things, that can share opportunities with you, generation wealth opportunities, game, information, love, time, to rekindle relationships, to build relationships, all of these different things, time with your kids to watch what they're doing to them at school, time, with your body to get healthy, all these different things. So the bottom line is, the mental illness kicked in, and there was two things to get straight to it. Narcissism. So this created a mental illness of narcissism. Narcissism is basically, got all different pieces. Y'all look that up out there that's watching, because it's bottom line is you self-destruct. It's always me, me, me. You never look at yourself. Now you're reaching for something and you become in a delusion mindset of unrealistic. Everybody's jumping on you, or you're in this place of unrealistic ways of dealing with life, and then you become either victimizing others or become a victim, and you don't know why, because you're practicing this behavior based on all this crap that you have seen and that you've done or got modeled behind, which is where the Bandura doll comes from. Is it's a form of modeling, and children do it. Children, when they're in their early development, they model, they watch you and you say, look at what she did you just smile like me? I see my grandson doing that. He was only like 2 months, and I'm thinking he just twitching like the baby twitch, but I smile, he smiled too at 2 months. So that's a form of modeling. And sometimes, and as we know, between 0 and 1 years old, where our mental capacity, our brain is 75% developed. And so therefore, in the midst of all of that, the Bandura doll showcased a group of dolls in a room watching TV. And when they were watching TV, on TV was little kids fighting each other and dolls fighting each other. And so the little girls that was watching the experience was an experiment. When they turned the TV off, all the kids that was watching it start fighting each other. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
Just in that little bit of time. So just imagine when someone is constantly seeing this crap. Now everybody think that's the only way they can be famous. You know, if they see somebody that quote unquote they're showcasing lives this luxurious life all of a sudden because they was a stripper, and now they got discovered, from stripping. Now everybody go to the strip pole and think they're gonna get discovered in a strip pole, in a strip club. They're gonna get famous. Now you got a group of people whose brain mirabellum is not even developed fully, that they're thinking that this is a part of, unfortunately, there's a rebellious state we go through, and there's a different class of youth today. That's them wanting an easier route. Unfortunately, the leadership is taking from a lot of parents at home. The leadership on TV is now the leader. That's what the leader is social media and TV, and people who look prestigious, based on what they supposedly had accomplished. So now they looking at mama and daddy like, what you say and who you do and honey, bye. I'm going over here because this mansion on the Desperate Housewives looked like it was $1 million mansion. It probably only it could have been an Airbnb home. You know what I'm saying? And it's looking like a mansion, and they looking like they fly, and it's a sweet sweet 16 $50,000 party that somebody done spent some money on, and now they don't have no respect for their parents. So there's a form of salivation. So that experiment specifically was for the Bandura doll when I spoke on modeling and garbage in, garbage out, and not enough balance. I'm speaking at this point on the salivation. So there was also an experiment of salivation, whereas this particular one, I believe that was Sigmund Freud, and he had a dog that would saliva. He would salivate. I never forget the word salivate. And it's saliva. And it was every time he ate some food and didn't give the dog any food, the dog wanted that food. So he just sat there, every time he just wanted it more and more, but he kept it in his face. You know what I mean? And so that is a typical, element of what has become over these years. And now you just got a whole bunch of stuff going on at one time, and everybody's working in an unrealistic state of mind. And it's causing mental illness for others. It's causing us to stay behind. It's causing us to be enslaved, and no one wants to take accountability. And then you got these secret agents that want to fight truth at the end of the day for their own agendas and all their plans going on. And it's just a mess.
Thank you for breaking that down. Excellent by Miss Suga T on the Hip Hop Uncensored podcast. I want to talk about your journey in the music industry itself. Obviously, we hear a lot of horror stories. We hear a lot of great stories about the music industry. How was your time in the music industry? And as a woman, how do you think that you were treated and perceived from higher ups and things like that? Was it always respectful, or did you get treated like a lot of women that we hear are treated unfairly and things like that? How was your experience?
Well, I deal with some politics, and those politics were more so politics of, other things that I'm gonna talk about in my book, right? And it's kind of was a normal thing, a normal thing from the inside, you know what I mean? But not anything critical that at the time of the beginning, it wasn't, we were flying, and I was treated extremely respectfully. I was protected, and still am, to a certain point, sometimes too protected. But bottom line is, it was different. It was very different. We were somewhat of a voice, far more, but a voice of reason, you know what I mean, versus a voice of foolishness. But eventually I started realizing there was politics around it, kind of to stay in your place, and, somewhat of from different places, not necessarily from outside, but, from the inside, there was things that kind of, helped it make it a little more difficult sometimes for me to express myself and have a form of freedom. But it wasn't hard. You know what I mean? That's the beauty of it. There was an up and down, and there was other inside things that could have been different, but there's different ways that everybody is taught to act and do things. So eventually you figure out that there was issues and limitations of how people learned how to deal with things, including myself. You know what I mean? So it was a learning experience, because it's very difficult to be amongst a family. As you know, I'm the only girl of 5 brothers. And then, you have all the different moving pieces around that they have to, certain people have to satisfy certain people in their space, and, just a lot of other stuff that I will be speaking about on this project that I do, because it's a little more in depth, and I don't want to leave it where it just sticks to one final closure, because there's a method to the madness. And to me, when we point out situations, we should always close out with an understanding. So all my trauma and drama, I close out with an understanding. So, but in a nutshell, to address, yes, it was a very great time. Actually, there was a lot of balance. What I did for myself was pull it back purposely, because when I seen that there was some other things around me that was a little bit more important that I needed to maintain, that whereas years later it could have haunted me, you know what I mean? For instance, my children, I was a mother through my whole career. A lot of women were okay with leaving their children with nannies, and my mother wasn't okay with me just leaving my kids with her, and I wasn't willing to leave them with nobody. She let me leave them, but honey, when we got off the airplane, she's like, "Okay, but where you at? Okay, come get your kids. I didn't have them. Where you at? Come on." You know, so at the end of the day, I could have put a nanny in their space and all that, but that wasn't my interest. I wanted to be there with my children, so I came back to my kids. So most people went back and was partying and running around. I had a little bit of party time, but I always had to have that balance of limitations of what I would do and how I would act in front of them, and and how to make sure that they were okay and wasn't felt neglected, because I decided to be in the entertainment industry further than what I, from the beginning, that was my first responsibility, was a mother. And so bottom line is I drew myself back a certain way just to kind of make sure that I maintained a certain amount of balance, because at one point it seemed like it got up to a certain, after 16 years of this game, got to a point where I felt like I was being stagnated. Everybody wanted to have the same message. And I'm like, this can't be normal to me. Like, everybody still talk about something that we evolved from. I don't want to keep talking about this. Yes, I know that there's a lot of things that we still, encounter as a people ongoing, but that's not my only experience. My only experience ain't just been hood, and acting a fool and being beat up. And I'm not glorifying that stuff, because at the end of the day, when you find out what your brand, with the influence that you have on other people, and that's all that you're giving them, at that point, I felt like I'm not being a teacher. I'm not being a person who edifies the people. I'm being a person that's just giving them one conversation in one part of life, and then the way that that it could be addressed, it can come in multiple ways. So I wanted to kind of step back and just look at things. You know what I mean? And a lot of people didn't understand maybe my separation for a moment, but I had to get well, and I had to balance. So I made my walk a little bit harder than most, because when I did that, I kind of outgrew what everybody else kept doing. And I just wasn't with that. And I kind of wanted to explore some other areas and do some other things.